Welcome to HSBC Global Viewpoint, the podcast series that brings together business leaders and industry experts to explore the latest global insights, trends, and opportunities. Make sure you're subscribed to stay up to date with new episodes. Thanks for listening, and now on to today's show.
Thanks for joining today's episode of our Perspective series. I'm Tian Lu, CEO of HSBC Qianhai Securities. Today, we are very pleased to have Alain Li, President of French Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Hong Kong. Welcome, Alain.
Thank you very much.
So, Alain, before this role, you were the Regional Chief Executive for Asia Pacific at luxury powerhouse Richemont, which includes world-famous brands such as Cartier, Montblanc, Piaget. So today, let's talk about Chinese consumption, which has been relatively subdued since the pandemic. And that's a contrast from the 2010s, when Chinese became prominent on the global stage as consumers of luxury goods. So Alain, if you can give us a sense of how Chinese consumption has changed in the last 5 years.
So the onset of the pandemic actually was quite an interesting period because firstly, it may seem counterintuitive, but all of the luxury groups experienced exceptional growth during the period 2020 to 2024-25.
Interesting.
In the case of Richemont, the overall business grew by almost 50%. What happened was that because people couldn't travel, people started consuming their local market. So, and again, China did extremely well between 2020 and 2024 towards the end of the pandemic. And of course, things have been a little bit more challenging because I think the whole environment is changed. Firstly, in terms of China's macroeconomic situation with the property market, definitely the so-called feel-good factor or confidence level is maybe not as high. But also the other thing to remember is that people are starting to travel again. So they're not just consuming in their local market; they are now traveling to other places for leisure, but also to buy luxury goods. So the Chinese consumer is still a very important segment of the luxury consumption.
What measures have the government put in place to stimulate consumption? Any other interventions?
Well, I think you expect. You know better than I do. The government has been talking about and put in certain actions in terms of trade-in policies for vehicles and also for some white goods and brown goods. I think Shanghai also introduced some vouchers for F&B restaurants and so on. So there have been some localized actions that have been taken or very industry specific, particularly to help Chinese manufacturers as well. Whether that it will lead to people feeling more confident and then spending in other categories, I think it still remains to be seen, but we're still waiting to see some of the other measures that may be rolled out in the months to come.
So has that helped local brands, the homegrown brands, and do you think they will continue to take market share from their international competitors?
Well, for sure. I mean, if you look at what's happened with Lao Pu, it's incredible, sort of a remarkable story. And even some of the local fashion brands like Icicle continue to do very well. But I think that has been a shift in consumer choices with a lot of the mainland Chinese consumers starting to favor and to recognize the craftsmanship and the quality of the local brands that you have here in China. So I think it's a very healthy situation. People often forget that Chow Tai Fook is huge as a business. $80 million turnover, even though the last couple of years have also been tough for Chow Tai Fook. But, there are sort of domestic or, if you like, regional brands that have always performed quite well and continues to be very significant.
You also mentioned property. So it's a common theory that the real estate boom, there's a wealth effect that provided support to spending on the high-end goods.
Sure.
But do you think there will be something else to help spending on high-end goods in addition to the real estate boom?
Well, I think everybody is looking at the huge amount of savings that have been accumulated that, at some point, hopefully will, when the confidence returns, and maybe when the property market really starts to stabilize. And I think we have read and we've seen that, in certain areas, the property market seems to be doing a little bit better, or hoping that at some point this huge pool of savings will not only go into the stock market and investments, but will also encourage people to spend. And I think there are certain segments that where you've seen that. I mean, travel has been doing extremely well. And actually, Trip.com showed that actually domestic and international travel is actually above pre-COVID levels. And, some of the results as well from Alibaba were rather encouraging. So I think there are signs of, say, at least stabilization, and maybe, some people starting to dip into their savings and spending on discretionary items. Travel, of course, being the predominant one.
So what does this all mean for the luxury goods sector in China? Is there still room for growth? And if so, which segments do you see growth?
Well, I think just in terms of sheer demographics, the size of the China market, and also the fact that, as I think has been well documented, one of the phenomenons with regards to luxury goods in China, the development of luxury goods, has been, the appetite for luxury from a much younger consumer. So the average age of the luxury consumer in China up until recent times was still about 10 years below more mature markets. So if you take those elements, the reserves in terms of savings, the fact that people have an appetite, they've experienced luxury, and certainly in our experience is, although there are obviously cycles, if the feel-good factor is there, if the conditions are right, then people will spend their discretionary income on the best products and the best brands that they can find. That being said, it's now clear that there are some brands that maybe during the pandemic increased prices too aggressively. So there's been a backlash on that. So there's some specific areas, I think, and specific reasons why maybe some brands aren't doing as well as others. But then, if you look at some of the fashion brands like Brunello Cucinelli, which is still very exclusive, has continued to perform very well even in China. And there are other brands that again remain quite exclusive but very desirable. Continue to see a good performance. So this, whereas when times were good and everybody felt really good, as we say, rising tide raises all ships. Now I think it's a little bit more selective in terms of which brands and in which categories people are coveting.
Okay, so there seems to be a shift in consumer behavior, from just status symbols to, actually you touch on that, to some more affordable goods, and also a much greater interest in high quality, sustainable goods. So do you think that's a new normal, or that's just a reflection of a temporary economic downturn?
No, I think that's part of the basic instincts. If you have enough discretionary income, you will always want to buy the best you can.
Right.
Of course, in terms of the VICs, or they're very wealthy, they continue to spend, continue to travel. The market has been supported by more aspirational clients who maybe now don't have that same feel-good factor, or a little bit more secure in terms of their own feel. They're cutting back a little bit, but I think if they start to feel good about their own prospects and about the market, then traditionally we've seen people do tend to return and look for the best that they can. And there's also been talk about people looking for more experiences and so on. But I think again that is something that has always been around. I mean, the desire to travel, to find new experiences, to go to new places, something that existed pre-COVID, and we were all locked down during COVID. So now there's a kind of a revenge traveling that's happening. But while people travel and while people do, go for these experiences, they still want to be, in some cases, wearing the right stuff. So if you look at some of the sport leisure brands that have done very, very well, as people become also more health conscious, there are certain categories that are also benefiting and from this new lifestyle, if you like, or new sets of priorities that consumers have.
Okay, and do you see that difference from different generations in particular?
Not necessarily. I think, the pursuit of health and travel is something that's actually intergenerational. In fact, from people I know who are in that industry, they say that actually now you see a lot of families traveling together. There are 3 generations going on long vacations, wanting to experience these things together. Grey economy is one that I think people are talking about as well, more and more. The other thing is, to bear in mind that we, as people, still look for reasons for gifting or rewarding ourselves. So, be it birthdays, marriages, engagements, and so on. People want to have something that marks that occasion for them, that, in 20 years' time or 30 years' time, they can look back and there's something that kind of fuses that special moment. And I think that is something that, we still see. And that's why I think if you look at, in terms of luxury industry again, the jewelry sector has actually continued to perform better than the rest. Speaking of my previous life with Richemont, if you look at Richemont's results, last couple of years, the jewelry brands have done well, and Laopu is again an example. So I think people want something that endures, that they can see the value, they can see the craftsmanship, and help us again to fuse mark really special moments in their lives.
Moments I experience, everyone is desire, aspiration for, and given your long experience of managing major luxury brands in China, what common mistakes do you see that companies can make in China?
To overexpand and also to focus on service. Sometimes brands, when they expand too fast, maybe the service hasn't quite been there, or the quality has suffered. So if you look at some of the brands that have performed very, very well, their footprint still is really quite selective, and therefore people seek them out. So I think that the focus on product innovation, quality is still something that consumers today are even more discerning. And there's so much information that's available out there that people are very careful about what they buy, and they want to make sure that it is of the best quality.
We have a lot of investors today's China conference, HSBC China conference. So I'm asking you a question on behalf of them. Is there any signs that a company is going to be successful?
Uniqueness in terms of its product offering, and having that sort of desirability. There are still brands that are relatively small that are waiting to be discovered. People like newness. They like authenticity and so on. So having those fundamentals, and sometimes you see brands sort of trying to create a story that maybe if you look into it, is not storytelling there, but so the authenticity in terms of the craftsmanship, and they're still even in various parts of the world, not just in Europe, in Asia, and Laopu being people are now discovering that this has genuine Chinese-based craftsmanship behind it. And you can see that once that and today with how quickly information is circulated, when people discover something, they love to share, and so that flywheel effect can happen much more quickly these days than, let's say, 30, 40 years ago, when we didn't have all of these digital tools to help us.
Social media. And are there any other consumer trends that people haven't picked up yet?
Travel will continue to be a big theme. I think, maybe certain areas of the world where people have not experienced before. I know a lot of people that I speak to, they're very interested now in discovering a little bit more about, the Middle East. Or in some cases, even South America. Everybody's been to Europe, into Japan. So I think there are people looking for new experiences in different parts of the world. If you look at the trends of number of people traveling and so on, I think that underpins that.
Alain, thank you again for joining us and spending time with us, and thank you for your very enlightening insights. With that, we'll conclude today's episode.
Thank you for joining us at HSBC Global Viewpoint. We hope you enjoyed the discussion. Make sure you're subscribed to stay up to date with new episodes.